Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? That's going to be the theme of today's show, and I want you to consider that question as you think about some of the stories we covered today. These stories are ominous. They can be frightening to some, but we're going to cover what's happening in the world. And as I said, I want you to ponder that question. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago today? So August 5th, we're fast approaching the November election, the presidential election. Many stories are breaking. World news: Iran is considering attacking Israel following the assassination of Hamas's leader in Tehran. We have the stock market taking the largest hit in decades, with the Dow Jones down over 1,000 points today. And we're going to cover some other stories in the campaign trail. But again, I want you to ponder that question. So welcome back to Saving the Republic with Joe Staten, presented by Grab Your Gear Network. We are a network who speaks to people who get up and go to work every day and work hard. So if that's you, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed what we talk about today. Maybe not enjoyed what we talk about, but at least enjoy the way it's presented. And leave a comment below on what your thoughts are. We always love to hear from people and respond to people and interact. So let us know your thoughts down below. So as I said, the first story we're going to cover is not a wonderful story, but we're going to cover it. And that is the crashing of the stock market. Now, last night, I actually witnessed there was this futures index in the Japanese stock market, and it basically tracks the volatility of the stock market, and it took the biggest hit or had the biggest fluctuations since 1990. Okay, it's been 34 years since this big of a hit happened. And as you can see here from CNBC, the Dow tumbles 1,000 points, S&P 500 posts worst day since 2022 in global market sell-off. The Dow dropped 1,033 points, or 2.6%, to end at 38,703, lost 3.43%, and closed at 16,200, while the S&P 500 slid 3%. And interestingly enough, I want you guys to take a look at this as well. One company's stock didn't do too badly today, and that was Lockheed Martin, which over 5 days is up 3%. They had quite the bump over the past month. So it's interesting in light of some of the news regarding World War III that we keep hearing. A lot of the developments we're seeing that Lockheed Martin is doing well. Their stock goes up. Meanwhile, the rest of the market comes crashing down. And, again, this follows in the footsteps of President Trump announcing his strong support for Bitcoin. Bitcoin is down to about $54,000 per coin from a high of about $70,000 this year. But President Trump is a strong supporter of cryptocurrency, will be as a president, strong supporter of Bitcoin, so I'm sure that will affect the market outlook. But really, you could argue the markets are responding to some of the news regarding Iran, saying they openly are going to strike Israel in response for Israel taking out Hamas's leader in their country. But I really think that this is largely due to the political climate and what's going on with the odds of the presidency. And as you can see here from Polymarket, Kamala is sitting at about a 43% chance to win right now. President Trump at about 54%. This is actually down from a high. Trump was at about 65%, or actually close to 70%, right before President Biden dropped out of the race. And as you can see in this electoral map, the chances of Democrats winning Michigan and Pennsylvania, according to Polymarket, has now gone into the positive rating, with them having the advantage and Republicans having a slight advantage in Wisconsin, including Arizona and Nevada. And now I've seen multiple polls showing Georgia, with Kamala Harris getting really close in Georgia, which is it's actually very hard to believe that somebody who would vote against the President Biden would vote for Kamala Harris, given that their policies are identical. Kamala Harris largely does not know what she's doing, just to be honest. If you've heard Kamala Harris try to talk about energy policy or blockchain technology, I saw a video of her trying to explain cloud technology recently. You can just tell this is a woman who's probably in over her head when it comes to geopolitics, when it comes to national energy policy, foreign policy. So it's just kind of surprising to me that the electoral odds would change with Kamala Harris. I do think she has a temporary bump in the polls. And I want to make a point really quickly here as well. The Supreme Court today ruled on President Trump's appeal to suspend his sentencing hearing for the New York hush money case. And so the case will be decided still on September 18th, before the election is when the sentencing will happen. And so I think that could change the outcome of the election. Quite frankly, I think people talk about the October surprise. Maybe there will be an October surprise. Maybe, as we've all seen many times, the rumblings of a black swan, whether that's what the FBI has been warning about with the potential of attacks on the election software. But I think that the sentencing of President Trump will have a massive impact potentially on the outcome of the election, and we will see how that goes. But an example to consider here with that hearing and that sentencing hearing is if President Trump is sentenced to prison, if that judge, the highly conflicted judge, as Trump calls him, with a daughter who's made millions off Democrats, if that judge legitimately sends the Republican nominee for president to jail in the middle of an election, which, by the way, I wouldn't put it past him. I would not put it past this judge to send Trump to jail. But if he does that, you better believe that is potentially going to impact the outcome of the election. That is going to give, in my opinion, former President Trump a big boost in the polls. It's going to take all this attention off Kamala Harris. Really what's happening right now, if you ask me, is Kamala Harris is running largely unquestioned. She's had very little press. She's had to do very few interviews. I don't think she's done any interviews, quite frankly, since she's become the nominee. And so she's skating on this really avalanche of good press praising her and building her up, and really just an unsustainable wave, if you ask me, of positive press, where, again, I've said it several times in the show, I'll keep saying it till the election happens, and that's Kamala Harris is a very unpopular candidate. When she ran for president in 2020, as many of you know, she topped at about 5% in the polls and had to drop out before the first caucus even occurred. And so I think if President Trump gets sentenced to jail, the attention is going to be taken off Kamala. This wave of good press is going to have to subside. And the focus is going to be on the fact that former President Trump, which has already become a martyr of sorts, especially, you talk about the court cases, especially after the attempted assassination of President Trump, has already become a martyr of sorts. And that will just continue to build if he is forced to go to prison. And so I think that could impact the outcome of the election. I think if Judge Merchan is smart, given that we all know he's a Democrat at heart, if he actually is smart and wants to see his candidate win in Kamala Harris, he wouldn't send Trump to jail. But can he really resist himself? I don't know. Can he control himself? I doubt it. It didn't look like he had much self-control in that trial, slamming his fist, getting mad when Trump's people were testifying and presenting evidence that was to the contrary of what he wanted to happen in that case. So I don't think he can control himself. I don't have much faith in him to do that. But again, it'll be interesting to see what happens. All right, it'll be interesting to see. I think that could be a potential October surprise, or call it a September surprise, if you will. Now, in other news, we have Iran, and this is as of 10:30 Eastern time on Monday night. We have an article here from Axios. President Biden briefed that Iran attack timing and details are still unclear. And it says, President Biden and Vice President Harris were told by their national security team on Monday that it is still unclear when Iran and Hezbollah are likely to launch an attack against Israel and what specifically the attack might entail. In the meeting Biden and Harris had with the National Security Council in the White House Situation Room on Monday, the assessment was more nuanced, U.S. officials said. The official said Biden and Harris were told U.S. intelligence expects a scenario involving two waves of attacks, one from Hezbollah and one from Iran and several other of its proxies. Still unclear to U.S. intelligence who's going to attack first and what kind of attack they're going to conduct. One U.S. official said intelligence indicates that response by Iran and Hezbollah is still a work in progress, and both are undecided about exactly what they want to do. And so we've seen Iran openly come out today and say, we are going to attack Israel. We are going to respond. So we know it's happening, right? We know this is going to occur. Now, a scenario to run through potentially with this attack is, first of all, how severe is the attack going to be, right? If Iran launches a full-scale attack on Israel, and I mean hundreds of missiles, they penetrate the Iron Dome, they hit some civilian targets, they legitimately inflict real damage upon Israel, I think we run the risk of dragging the U.S. into a conflict. Say what you will about the U.S. The reality is that we are a staunch supporter of Israel as we stand right now as a country. I saw reports from the Pentagon that we already had sent 4,000 Marines over to the Middle East, and really, I think that's in direct response to what's happening in Israel. But we could easily see a scenario in which the U.S. is dragged into a conflict between Iran and Israel. I don't think Iran wants to really touch the United States. I think they understand, even with Biden, even with the lack of leadership, I would say, and the sheepish nature in which he governs, I think they understand that you still don't want to mess with the U.S. You still don't want to do that. So I don't think Iran wants to involve us. Therefore, I think their attack will be somewhat measured. And to be fair, I do think the attack on the Hamas leader in Iran, a political leader, was a little bit provocative. It wasn't a direct attack on a military official. You know, it wasn't a direct attack in the country. It was a direct attack in another person's country. It was essentially an assassination. So, given that fact, I think there will be some sort of attack. I think the U.S. and others on the world stage will view a measured attack by Iran as somewhat reasonable and therefore not get overly involved in responding, even though I highly doubt that Prime Minister Netanyahu will resist the opportunity to strongly strike back at Iran regardless of the strength of their attack. So it'll just be interesting to see how this story develops. We are in the early stages of this conflict. We can only hope and pray, if you are a person of faith, which you probably are if you watch this show, but not that you have to be. But we can only hope and pray that this conflict and others that we see in the world stage, Russia and Ukraine, Hamas and Israel, some of the tensions rising with North Korea, we can only hope that these don't continue to avalanche into a bigger conflict. I really believe that China would feel so emboldened by a Harris presidency. I think you could count on one hand the amount of months it would take for them to make a move toward Taiwan if Kamala Harris is the president of the United States. I would also venture to say that if President Trump is reelected and we don't see some sort of massive black swan event, which don't hope there is, but I've seen many like Tucker Carlson and others calling and predicting that this is even likely to happen, whether there's something in the power grid, whether there's something with the election reporting software that the FBI has warned about. Barring one of those type of events and President Trump winning re-election, I think China does not go for Taiwan. And I legitimately believe, and you guys can let me know what you think down in the comment section below. I legitimately believe that President Trump would have that war with Ukraine and Russia ended very quickly. Now, you can call it, oh, he's sucking up to Putin. You can call it, oh, he's cozy with Russia. The bottom line is that I don't think Trump stands for the principles of that war. I don't think he stands against democracy, but the reality is that Ukraine is a very far cry from what we would call an ideal democracy. You know, the seat of democracy. I would not list Ukraine on that level. So I think he'd have the war ended. I think he would help with that side of things. As far as Israel and Hamas, you know, I saw Trump say that he'd have that conflict taken care of as well. I think that's a little bit of a trickier conflict. I would be shocked if President Trump got elected and was able to solve that one as quickly or easily as the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And let's just be real, okay? The Ukraine conflict is a losing battle. I just had a conversation with somebody today. What is the winning strategy? And this is what I've said about this before. In this sense, it reminds me of Vietnam. We have no clear winning strategy. You know, anything you do in life, I've been taught this, I've read about it from successful people. Anything you do in life, you should have a goal. You should understand where you're going. You need to understand, you know, the qualifiers for victory. What is it going to take to walk away from the situation in victory? You have to understand that no matter what you do in life. And the bottom line is that this Ukrainian conflict, there's no clear win for Ukraine. I mean, is the win to get Russia to secede and go back and say, all right, we're done fighting? Because the reality is that Russia's not going to do that. They've already gone over and conquered, in some ways, some land. And so they're not going to want to cede that land. They're not just going to give it up. Just like any other conflict, you're going to have to make a deal. You're going to have to make compromises. And I actually believe in President Trump's ability to do that. I do. Call me crazy. I believe he does. I also believe President Putin just does not really care to even entertain a conversation with Biden, and nor does Biden have the desire to communicate with Putin. You know, Biden and the Democrats have demonized Vladimir Putin for years and years and years, going back to President Obama. Is it warranted? Probably, to a certain degree, but also to a certain degree, as a diplomatic figure, you have the duty to your country and the world to try to get along with even your enemies if you can. So Biden has no reason to try to reason with Putin, even though he could, and he probably should. And he hypothetically, if he had his wherewithal about him, could have that war settled. So I just think it takes some common sense to end that war. I think President Trump could actually get that done. So a lot happening on the world stage in terms of foreign policy. We all will need to stay posted and see what happens. But as I said, Lord willing, this does not spin into World War III. I really think it could, unfortunately. Time will tell, and we'll see how it goes. Now, to wrap up today's show, I could keep going on that subject, but I'm going to keep it short for your guys' sake. Representative Raskin today had something to say that I think probably will surprise some of you, but also not surprise others of you who have heard the Democrat Party spew this talking point of saving democracy, all the while, for example, attempting to put their political opponent in prison, uproot the results, subvert the results of a democratic process by removing the rightful nominee of a party in Joe Biden, 14 million voters, and placing by conspiring behind closed doors with a bunch of donor class people and the like to pick and select and anoint a nominee in Kamala Harris. The same party who is so for democracy is over here already plotting to unseat a sitting president in President Trump come January of 2025. So take a look at what Representative Raskin has to say here, and we will talk about it.
What can be put into the Constitution can slip away from you very quickly. And the greatest example going on right now before our very eyes is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which they're just disappearing with a magic wand, as if it doesn't exist, even though it could not be clearer what it's stating. And so, they want to kick it to Congress. So it's going to be up to us on January 6, 2025, to tell the rampaging Trump mobs that he's disqualified. And then we need bodyguards for everybody in Civil War conditions, all because the 9 justices, not all of them, but these justices who have not many cases to look at every year, not that much work to do, a huge staff, great protection, simply do not want to do their job and interpret what the great 14th Amendment means. And I'm glad that Sherilyn's creating her new center so we can bring that.
So what Jamie Raskin is referring to here, as we will read, is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. And it says, "No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as any member of a state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability." So he's alleging, without proof, that Trump engaged in insurrection. President Trump is already being prosecuted in cases alleging this, none having yet proved this. And so, again, the party who likes to champion democracy, the party who likes to champion we must save our democracy, is already plotting to remove the potential rightful president of the United States come January by using the Constitution, twisting its meaning to fit their agenda, to remove a sitting president. So should it really surprise you? It doesn't surprise me. We've seen them try to lock up Trump. We've seen them remove Joe Biden after winning 14 million votes by democratic process and anoint their own person in Kamala Harris. So it doesn't surprise me. This is the party of democracy, apparently, and they are breaking all the core tenets of democracy. So that's the last subject of the show today. Also, very quickly, I do want to note you guys should check out the Trump and Aiden Ross content, one of the biggest streamers of all time currently. Aiden Ross went to Mar-a-Lago today with President Trump, put out some pretty entertaining content. So I would highly suggest you go check that out. Didn't have time to put it in today's show, but go check it out. Do yourself a favor. With that being said, if you made it this far in the show, thank you so much for watching. Save the Republic with Joe Staten, presented by Grab Your Gear Network, where we speak to people who get up and go to work every day and work hard. If that's you, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Check out our other content. We'll have many types of content in the very near future: military content, prep content, outdoors, hunting, fishing, cooking, everything you could ever want. We have it on the channel. So make sure you check it out. Subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed it, comment down below your thoughts. And with that being said, I will see you next time on Saving the Republic.